The Survival Guide to Life.
If you could, just a brief description on who you are and what you've accomplished.
Oh, thanks. It's good to be here, Omar. I'm a therapist, and about 4 years ago, I started a YouTube channel called Therapist Talks. I created that so that I could share some of the mental health information that I've been gathering over the 30 plus years that I've been working in the field, and that I just wanted to share with other people all over the world who really don't have access to mental health therapy or information or strategies or perspectives. So I started that about 4 years ago. And then a few months ago, I put together a book focusing on how to deal with and heal from toxic relationships. And it's called Out of the Fog into the Clear, Journaling to Help You Heal from Toxic Relationships.
So right off the bat, I had a question on what took you down the path of wanting to study mental health.
Well, that was an interesting journey. I originally, as a kid, always wanted to be a veterinarian or a doctor. My dad was a surgeon, and that always fascinated me. But I think that having a lot of struggles with relationships myself in my late teens and early 20s, and really feeling like I was always flying blind and trying to figure it out with no help from anybody else, made me want to understand those kinds of things better. And so I went to grad school and became a therapist, and have really spent my life trying to understand what it is that creates healthy relationships and toxic relationships, and how do even smart, capable, amazing people get sucked into terribly self-destructive relationships.
So then, you, from when you first came into your practice towards now, and the generations, you can say in you said being 30 years in practice, so you could say those each decades, those were different groups of young children. What have you noticed in the throughout the years, and has it been better or worse?
Oh, that's a great question, Omar. In many ways, I think it's a lot worse now for young people growing up. They have a lot less guidance and a lot less understanding of what's going on. And yet, in some ways, it's better because people are more open about talking about things like depression and anxiety and toxic relationships and manipulation and control. Whereas many years ago, that was not understood at all. So I think in that way, it's better. I think it's also more acceptable for men to explore their feelings and to have more feelings than just anger or toughness. And so that's healthier. But I don't think that young people learn how to do even basic friendship relationships very well because of social media and a lot of sort of living on their screens and texting each other, even if they're sitting next to each other, and having text fights instead of sitting down and saying, you hurt my feelings and I really need to talk to you about this. So I think that there are a lot of skills that are not there for young people today.
Yeah, and it's crazy you say that, and it can even go into extremes. I just came across this weird case that came across the news that, two boys who were in school together that were roommates, they were playing a game next to each other, and they were chatting with other people in the dorm on like a group chat, and all of a sudden they heard screams, and the other one just ended up killing him, and over a video game.
Oh my gosh.
So,
Oh my gosh.
and you see these extremes, and I feel like because of people not being able to manage their mental health, or some are kind of shy in a way, and sort of I feel like before they had asylums, and then that was really bad, and then they sort of let everyone out. where if they had a better program or a better way to assess mental health, I think there would be like less problems that would be going on throughout the country.
Absolutely. And there are people doing really wonderful things in different areas of the country and of the world, trying to help young people understand their emotions better, express themselves, be more in collaboration and less in conflict. And then there are people that are just promoting craziness and conflict and negativity too. And so it's really important that each of us try to change our little part of the world, and sharing what you're sharing on a podcast setting is hopefully going to help other people understand how to survive life in a different way, in a healthier way.
Yeah. So with that, also, I was curious in when you said that it's gotten worse now. What have you noticed more, as in the problem or the issue is like with the majority of people?
Um, I think there is a lot of self-centeredness and a lack of empathy and lack of compassion. And that, I think, leads to a lot of the sort of entitled anger that people have at each other, and a lack of ability to just sit down and talk to each other and sort something out. Because conflict is normal in any kind of friendship or relationship. But you see people these days, instead of handling a conflict in a healthy way, that they will, draw guns on each other, or do an all-out cyberbullying campaign to destroy somebody. And those kinds of things are sort of intentional meanness that I think was more rare in the past, and it's more accepted. Revenge and vengefulness is sort of acceptable, and I think that that's one of the most destructive things ever. We have to, hopefully, we are more focused on empathy and compassion, forgiveness, love. Those kinds of things are the things that hold a society together, and vengeance and being offended by every single possibility of anything. If you drive down the road and you don't let somebody get in, and then they come after you with a shotgun, it's just people are just so reactive and take personal affront to everything that happens, instead of just being kind and caring and empathic and compassionate.
So, I sort of noticed this and kind of wondered that myself in why this like rising of a lack of empathy is there. And it was really interesting to me, and I just wanted to know, like, curious to your opinion. Do you think it's what's being projected out there, as in like media and things of that nature, or do you think it's a more of what's being projected on them at home?
So I think it should start at home, that kids are taught empathy and compassion. And some kids are just naturally empathic and compassionate, but kids are also naturally self-centered. And so what happens at home matters. And if there's guidance towards empathy and compassion, and some guidance away from self-centeredness, then there's going to be an impact there. But then kids go into the world, and self-centeredness is applauded, and those narcissistic traits of self-centeredness are really sort of shown out to the world as powerful, and so I think a lot of kids aspire to that instead of to being more caring and compassionate. So I think it is definitely media based, and a lot of kids are more raised by screens than they are by their parents. Parents are busy, they're working, and that sort of thing. And so if there's any kind of lapse in that kind of teaching and reteaching continually, then that is coming out as well.
Yeah, I think that's a huge thing in people are having children and not even realizing what they're getting into. As in, if
Mm.
you first would realize what it is you're bringing into the world and the responsibilities and how like touching and everything has a huge impact. If you can study proper parenting books and like prepare for it like it was an exam, then when the baby was born, I think you'd be in a proper mindset in what you're getting into. But I think like maybe 3 to 5%, if that, do that, you know?
Yeah, that's so true. You know, for a lot of people, it's just sort of an automatic thing that they do, but they don't think it through and actually sort of intentionally parent. And parenting is extremely difficult, and it takes a lot of sort of altruistic effort to help a child grow into a kind, caring, compassionate adult. We have to, you know, lovingly address their self-centeredness, not beat it down, but just recognize that kids are naturally self-centered, and we have to teach them to be also, you know, that to take care of themselves. You know, they have to learn that, but they really need to learn also to be compassionate towards others, to care about others, and to not be so self-centered. And you're right. It is a lot of kids are really being parented by a television screen or an iPad or that kind of thing. A lot of parents go into it not realizing how much work it is and how hard it is, and they don't really give of themselves in the way that they ought to. For some, it's kind of like what the kid can bring to their lives in terms of, you know, showing them to be a good parent, even though they don't want to put the effort into actually doing it.
Yeah, and then I think if you can shy away from the iPads and go into books, like you know, my cousin with her daughter, she doesn't like watch TV or anything, but now you see her
Wow.
and like she the only thing she does all the time she's just reading, and it's so good to
Wow.
see like when you instill that from a young age. And like she knows the whole periodic table at like age 6. I'm like, that's impressive.
What?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
That's really cool.
so it just goes it shows you, like, you know, if you put the effort and like you try to be there. But see, now she's a doctor, and she's like, I want to have more children, but I can't now because I can't put the time in there. And I'm like, see,
Hmm.
other whereas you see other people, I remember being in high school and had girls walking around in between periods and they were pregnant.
Mm. Yeah, and kids raising kids is a real setup. So we have to, you know, the adults around them have to come in alongside and really help those kids to understand how to raise healthy kids, because you have to be there 100% of the time for that kid from 0 to age 1, and really help them learn that someone is there and someone is meeting their needs. And then you have to start teaching them not to be so self-absorbed from ages 2 on. So it's a big job.
Yeah, and then
Sounds like your sister knocked it out of the park.
no, that's where no, not, that was my cousin, but
Oh, your cousin, sorry.
yeah, no, but I think that these are the things or the efforts that people need to make in mental health, especially with the pandemic and what happened and people being trapped with each other. You saw a lot of like abuse within like couples and things of that nature, or just a lot of depression or people not being mentally strong. And I think you know, there's healthcare, and but not a lot of the healthcare is allocated towards mental health needs. Like I myself have like, if you have like say a public healthcare or public insurance, trying to find a therapist or a psychiatrist is like one in a million.
It's really hard, even if you have good health insurance. The demand on therapists these days is so extreme that it's very hard to, waiting lists are extremely long. And I think that the pandemic sort of brought to light a lot of issues. So if you're trapped indoors and you're trapped away from other people, the downside is that you have no outlets and you have no outside supports. The upside is that you actually maybe are cut off from the constant busyness, and you can kind of regroup and reassess some of the things in your life. So I've seen it work both ways. But overall, it was so incredibly stressful that there was a huge escalation in depression and anxiety and in relationship dysfunction, and people feeling when they got into a toxic relationship, they were really trapped. So that has been a real issue for people too.
No, when being in toxic relationships, like I've heard like friends say that like they keep falling into this trap where they keep finding the same person over and over again. Where I told them, you could correct me if I'm wrong, where I feel like until you can change or correct what's in yourself, you will keep getting what you're projecting out. Like the outward is what's your inward.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's a little bit different than a projection, but it is true that a lot of times either we carry this internally toxic relationship inside our own heads, or that was created during the last toxic relationship. So for some people, that's a lifelong issue, that they just put themselves down. They're constantly running themselves down so that when they are around somebody who treats them that way, it's not, it isn't that they welcome it or want that. Nobody wants that, but it doesn't, it kind of resonates in a way with, oh yeah, that's how I feel about me too. And so it's kind of, they feel it's true. Whereas if you feel good about yourself, if you know who you are and what you're about, and you know your character and your values and what you're about, then when someone comes at you with that really negative, devaluing, toxic stuff, you're like, oh, I don't need that person in my life. They're awful. And so you would veer away from that person. So you're right that a lot of times if you come out of a toxic relationship, but you don't address that toxic messaging inside your own mind, then you're kind of doomed to get into another relationship with someone who treats you that way as well. So it's extremely important, and I talk about it in my book. The first set of journal prompts is all about how do you talk to yourself inside your own head. And are you your own best friend, where you encourage yourself and you support yourself and you give yourself sort of that caring compassion, or do you talk down about yourself and call yourself a loser, an idiot, or stupid, or whatever anytime you have a frustration or disappointment or have a hard time in your life? And if you have that very toxic relationship with yourself, you've got to sort that out before you go into another relationship, or you will probably pick up another person that's going to treat you the same way.
Yeah, right. Like you are your own worst enemy.
For sure. For sure. And a lot of people don't have any awareness of that. So they will bounce from one to another and think that this one's different. But it isn't different if you haven't done that internal work. And if you're not even aware of how you're talking to yourself inside your own head, then you're not going to do that work. So it's really important to recognize it and then take it out and look at it. And then look at developing some real genuine self-esteem, which comes from who you are as a character. What are your character qualities, and what are your values, and what's important to you, and how do you treat people? Those are the things that are who you are. And that's the other thing I see in our culture these days is young people think, who I am is how I look, what's in my bank account, what kind of job I have, my hair, my nails, my biceps, those kinds of things are who I am. And that's not who you are. who you are is how you treat people, your character qualities, your values.
Yeah, that I think that, and then that your inward is what people like. If I always had, I forget who said this, but I really loved it. But if we all like walked around and our appearance was our inner qualities, and we just saw each other for our inner qualities, the world would really be an ugly place, you know?
Well, or in
It-
contrast,
yeah,
if we did that, a lot of people would be absolutely beautiful.
yeah.
And they, when we might say, "Oh, that person's not very attractive," but when you are living your most true self, I think you do shine from the inside out, and that beauty is really really beautiful.
That's true, and I think when you have that, that's when you can radiate true relationships, both intimately and as friendships.
Absolutely.
But it's when you go against your own like moral values or moral self. But we when talking about toxic relationships as per relationships, but what about people who grow up in a way that their parenting was told that they were going to amount to anything, or they have no future. So now when they're growing up and they want to accomplish something, they have this limiting factor in their head thinking that they're never going to be anything.
Yeah, those toxic messages from parents can be really harmful and really damaging, and it's really important to recognize what those messages were and recognize too that each of us was born with completely unique abilities and passions and just a unique set of circumstances that have created who we are, again, from in our character qualities and our values. And so finding what matters to you and finding, that we don't have to do something spectacular in our lives. I think a lot of, again, our culture says if you don't do something spectacular, then you're nothing. And that's just not true. You can do anything and do it with love, and that is a beautiful thing. And you can impact your world, which might be a very small world, and impact that with love, and that's a beautiful thing. And you're living your best self and best life. So that limiting of saying I'm not worthy or I'm not good enough, those were lies. And what you have to look at are, what are the truths about me? What do I love? What am I passionate about? What do I see that I can do? And whether it's something that other people would say is important or not, it doesn't matter. What matters is that you're living the truths that you know to be true about you.
So, when trying to be one's true self or reach one's true potential, it's a long road and a rocky road, you could say, but it takes persistence and acknowledgement of oneself and being able to like self-examine yourself. But I also think you need a hand, like some from outer, like someone else's perspective, to sort of really give you that bird's eye view on what you're doing. So what do you think is like the need of like a therapist or like a coach or a mentor or just someone to really talk to? Because I feel like some people think that like, therapy is not for me and things like that. But where in fact it's good and it benefits all people.
Yeah, it can be really beneficial, and whenever a person can access therapy, I encourage them to do that, because it's always helpful to have a guide to help walk you through those hard times and help you sort through those things that, left to our own devices, we're not going to sort it through necessarily in the healthiest way, because we just don't know what we don't know. And that's an important truth. It sounds stupid, but we don't know what we don't know. When we're lost in the fog, of the toxic relationship within our own selves or with other people in our lives that are toxic, we are lost in the fog. And so it's really important to get that clarity. And if you have access to a therapist, great. Or look around you. You know, oftentimes young people have a coach or a teacher or an aunt or an uncle or, you know, somebody in your life who really genuinely cares about you and really genuinely looks out for you, or an older sibling or what have you. And when that person is really caring about your life and your growth and your finding yourself, that can be a great person to bounce things off of and to help you to become your best self.
You know, I think some people also want to go towards like finding a treatment, like say if they're in depression or in anxiety and things of that nature. But I think some therapists or doctors are really quick in trying to prescribe medication, whereas working out the problem and talking about it, which is more work, but would stop the problem in the long run and prevent other problems. I was curious in your perspective on that.
Yeah, that's very true. And there are tons of things that we can do personally in our own self-care and our own, again, internal self-talk that will change our feelings of depression and anxiety tremendously. So that internal self-talk, if you think about somebody, they say we talk to ourselves throughout the day about 40,000 times. So if you think about somebody sitting behind you telling you you're an idiot and a loser and you're stupid and you're worthless and you're unlovable 40,000 times during a day, you'd get depressed and pretty anxious, and you'd be kind of a nervous wreck, right? And so we have to recognize the power of that. And when we recognize, we become aware of it and we start to shift that into healthier self-talk, it makes a huge difference. And then secondly, we have to look at all of our self-care. So for a lot of people, that means getting to sleep at night, not being up all night and sleeping all day. It means eating healthier. It means getting out and getting exercise and sunshine and all of these things, and prayer and meditation and music and friendships. All of those things actually improve serotonin more than the medications do. So some people absolutely need medications in addition to all that self-care and self-talk change. And some people really could benefit so much from doing all of those strategies first and seeing what they're left with and seeing whether they need the medications or not. There are always side effects to medications. But absolutely, some people need that. So it's important not to veer away from it entirely, but to really do everything that you can in your power to get healthier emotionally, physically, and spiritually, so that you can know what your baseline is and whether you need medications or not.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you, because in some instances where you can say it's needed and it's must, but I think when you go and look at the data and see how many people are on it and stuff, I think that there's way too many. And if if you can like prescribe healthier lifestyles or healthier like ways of thinking, then there wouldn't be this need. But then I feel like that's not what the goal is for the companies, though, right?
Right. But I think most doctors have their heart in the right place and they're trying to do the right thing. And it's up to the individual to do the work on themselves so that they know that they're doing their best work to do their best self-care. And then they know what they need and don't need. And it's also true that if you are in a toxic relationship and you're in that fog and you're lost in that and you're feeling terrible and that person is gaslighting you and bullying you and manipulating and controlling you, you are going to be depressed and anxious no matter how many medications you put on board. And so it's extremely important to recognize that and start to get free of that fog, and come out of that, and then realize that your emotions are yours now, and you can focus your emotions on taking care of yourself now. And then you'll find that a lot of that depression and anxiety will probably lift.
So, how important is it for someone to sort of realize, being in that fog, it's really hard to like listen to anyone, your loved ones, your close ones, like telling you like, you need to get out of this, because no matter what they do, you just keep looking at the good. But in the long run, it's bringing you down and it's hurting you. Like the bad always outweighs the good. What sort of advice do you give to them to sort of get out of that?
Yeah, we have to realize that there are different parts of our brain. And so there's our rational brain, the higher cortex. It's our rational centers, our cognitive processes, our ability to sort things through and look at the facts. And then there's our emotional mind. So our emotional mind is very much attached to this person and might even be trauma bonded to that person. And so that part of us says, I love them, or I want to stay with them. And what's really important is to recognize that you can sort out the facts of the reality of the relationship. Like you said, listening to people around you. If everybody around you is telling you a bunch of facts about this relationship that they see, you've got to recognize those are facts. You yourself, during a crisis, probably have some realization of the facts. This person is mean, they devalue me, they gaslight me, they've separated me from my people, so I don't have a good sense of reality. All of these things are true, and those are the facts. So you have to separate the facts from your feelings, and then make a good decision based on the facts, and recognize that you can still love a person and decide with your wise mind to leave them because they're not healthy for you. And then when you've made that decision, then you have to walk through that decision step by step, dragging your heart along. So a lot of people in our culture, again, this is part of what's messed up in our culture with young people, but of all ages, as people will say, oh, follow your heart. Oh, if you still love them, you got to stick it out. That's not true. You can still love somebody and decide with your wise mind to leave, and decide that this is not good for you. And so if once a person realizes that there's those two parts of their brain, and that they can make that decision and then follow it through and not wait for their heart to be on board, then it's easier for people to actually follow it through. So if somebody that you know and care about is lost in that fog, you can try to help them understand that there are two parts of them that are warring inside, and that emotional mind is not necessarily going to be on board with the rational, and that they really need to listen to the rational mind.
I think that's where it just comes down to, like, when you really know the truth and you sort of like try to ignore it within yourself, and then that's when you have to really wake up and like see what's going around you, right?
Yeah, and that's hard. It's easier. Well, and some of those are nice qualities in a person that you want to try, that you want to believe in that person, that you want to forgive and move forward, and all those are nice qualities. But if you're giving those nice qualities in a relationship to someone who's extremely self-centered, who is mean-spirited, who is controlling and manipulative, who doesn't really have any empathy or care towards you, then you're sharing those nice qualities with the wrong person. And you've got to see the reality for what it is and get out.
Like coming towards the future, and you being in therapy for so long, do you sort of see like a betterment in what's to come with our advancements, and you see all our technological advancements, and now being able to have like FaceTime therapy and things of that nature? Do you think that things would get better, or do you think that these technologies will sort of bring us down and things will sort of get worse?
I'm actually I'm a chronic optimist, but I'm really excited about the podcasting world. I think that there's so much good being shared. I've met wonderful hosts from all over the world, and I'm just having, really deep, meaningful conversations with people, and people are listening to those as a matter of what they do while they're out driving or walking or doing other things. And so I think that's amazing and wonderful. I'm excited about YouTube being used for so much good, and that people from all over the world can gather and not feel alone, and they can share and care about each other. So I'm optimistic about it. I think it's a wonderful thing. I think being able to have video conferencing with people is really healthy. That's probably one of the good things that came out of the pandemic, is that finally insurance companies realize that that is a good thing, and it's just as good as having somebody in your office, and sometimes better, because a lot of people are not able to get out and drive to an office. So I think that there's a lot of good that can be done with the technology these days.
That's good to know, and because you want to sort of look at the light, right, and go
Yeah.
towards that.
Mm-hmm.
So, what do you have sort of prepared for the future? Do you have any more books that you would like to write, or is there any other things you want to get into?
My current thing is just to get into more podcasts. Like I said, that having these deep, meaningful conversations with people from all over, and each of your audiences is completely unique. So your world is like this little enclave, and then other hosts' worlds are different enclaves, and there are literally thousands all over the world. And I think it's just extremely exciting to be able to have these conversations with people all over. I don't have any other books in me right now, but
So
that's a lot of work, and I'm kind of
I
glad
could
to have
imagine.
it in print. So that maybe down the line, yeah.
So, if say you're watching this video 5 years from now,
Uh-huh.
what do you want to sort of tell your future self?
Ooh,
Like,
that's an interesting question. I've never heard that one before. Um, Boy, I have no idea. I guess this is just the launching pad, and I hope that it's gone really well. And I hope that I'm doing lots of podcasts all over the place, because I think this is just a wonderful platform.
and then two truths and one lie. So you could tell me any two truths about yourself and one lie, and then you're gonna try to guess the lie.
Let's see. I play stand-up bass in a bluegrass band. I have jumped out of a perfectly good airplane with a parachute, of course. Um, and I am a whitewater raft guide.
Is the lie the bass musician for a bluegrass band?
Actually, that was a truth, but I don't play with a band anymore. So all three are
Uh,
true, but they're not. But they're not current. I don't play anymore in the bluegrass band. I was too busy. But yeah, all three, all
uh,
three are true, but not currently. Yeah. So you picked the right one.
okay. And then a quote, if you sort of one that's been resonating with you recently, maybe you've came across it reading or passed it by on a billboard or something like that.
Oh boy, a quote. Nobody can insult you unless you participate, and that's Eleanor Roosevelt. And it's not entirely true. People can insult us, but if we really are clean and clear and caring and compassionate within our own selves, then we won't participate in other people's insults. We will emotionally separate, maybe physically separate from that person, and we won't absorb their toxic mess.
I like that. And then lastly, if you can just share your socials and just how anyone can connect with you.
Okay. So Therapist Talks on YouTube with Shannon Petrovich. Therapisttalks.com or nofoggydays.com is my website, and I do blog, and so you can sign up there. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel so that I can let you know when things are coming out. And I do, like I said, live streams every other week. It's a really casual Q&A, so people get on and ask about different toxic relationship issues, and we sort through things like that. And it's a really supportive environment where people from all over the world gather to share and care.
Physically, mentally, spiritually, financially, consistently. The Survival Guide to Life.